Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and this is our place, yours and mine, where we talk and learn from the best minds on this beautiful earth about entrepreneurship, achievement. We are purveyors of the good life, curating environments that promote and even demand kairos moments of success, happiness, and euphoric achievement. I mean, we work relentlessly to attain levels of the highest performance in business and life. Here is to our collective happiness and to celebrating our human experience. My friends, it's time to run. Welcome, my friends, to the Trevor Chapman Show. This is Trevor, and with us today, we are lucky to have Hillary Jastrom. Hillary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Hillary, if you wouldn't mind, give us, to start off, a 60,000-foot overview of who is Hillary, but especially interesting, who was Hillary a decade ago, and what has brought you to who you are today and what you're known for?
Holy moly. A decade ago, I was unrecognizable to whom I am today. So a decade ago, I was a 9-to-5er and working, let's see, 2007. So I was working as a consultant at Best Buy, I believe, or I potentially was working, I was back in school. So a decade ago, I was back in school and majoring in advertising and marketing because prior to that, I had been an executive assistant and I really suck as an executive assistant. So I was ready to go back to school. And what has happened since then is I switched my concentration. So no longer did I work for partners in the public accounting firm or other marketing executives, etc. I instead decided to work in the marketing industry, and I held 2 jobs down, and then I was horribly ill, and I still have a chronic illness that's like multiple sclerosis, so super fun. And I had no choice but to reinvent myself. And so since that time, I have worked exceedingly hard, and I had to be doubly productive because I could not work full time when I first got ill. So I had to be doubly productive and make sure that I could still carry my load of the family finances. And now I have a marketing company that's bustling and thriving. And I just founded a nonprofit for chronically ill and disabled entrepreneurs. Unrecognizable.
Wow. So how long ago did you get MS? Did you say it was like MS, but it's not MS?
It's like MS. It is called transverse myelitis, and 1,400 people, Americans, are affected by it every year. So there's really no research dollars or anything like that. But I have a lesion in my spine that disrupts my electrical signal. So it's like I'm shorting a fuse all day long, just sparking all day long. And it's a very deep level of which you're affected. It's not just the sensory feelings of feeling like your legs are literally on fire, but it causes groundbreaking fatigue. Like I'll be laying down and like, could I please lay down? Well, you are laying down. So yeah.
So when I was 17, maybe even 16, I came home one day and my mom said, "Hey guys, we've got some news." And it was when she broke it to us that she had MS. And that was a traumatic time. You know, I was the oldest of 5 kids, and my dad was, he would build boats and then deliver them from Alaska down through the Panama Canal and up over to New York. And so he was gone a lot of the time during that period. MS, any autoimmune disorder, and is what you have an autoimmune disorder as well, or what? So you have lesions, and it's causing you to not allow electrical signals to literally go from brain through spine to toes, legs. Like what? Like what?
Yes.
Really? How is it? How does it differ from MS?
So it doesn't really differ from MS per se. MS really, the presentation of it is the lesions are more in the brain, and you can have lesions in your spine, but the same is true of transverse myelitis. These are very fluid diseases. There will always be a lesion in the spine for transverse myelitis, but you may not have lesions in the brain. So I have one lesion, it's a small one, and it formed about 4 years ago. But I think I really had something coming on prior to that because I had been to neurologists and they just couldn't find anything. But it affects a large bundle of nerves. So my legs are a disaster, and not from the standpoint of, I need so much more muscle tone because I'm really not that old. So kind of have that going for me that you don't really start going downhill until a little bit later. But it's not a matter of muscular stamina so much as it is after you have misfired so many times, like after you've tried to start the car so many times, you can flood it and it absolutely will not function. And that is exactly how it is with my legs. So I keep a recumbent exercise bike in the living room, and I try and hop on for short intervals every day between 3 and 5 minutes. I went for 17 minutes one time and lost the ability to walk. And so I had to climb over the arm of the couch. And I mean, my husband and I were just hysterical because it's not always, oh, this is so woeful and horrible. Like, you find the most ridiculous moments in it. So it's very similar to MS, and I'm being watched very carefully for MS.
So I remember that my mom used to take this, it was an injection, and it had something to do with I kid you not, like some Chinese guinea pig, something along those lines. And I don't remember. It was like it was like the brain tissue of some Asian rodent. Like, are you familiar with this? I know it sounds Star Trek, but I'm not joking. It's for real. It was like this experimental thing. And I remember thinking to myself, how did they even find out that if they inject brain tissue of this rodent that is Asian in origin, that it helps MS? But she did it for years. Like, have you gone through any of these experimental treatments, number one? And number two, do you take CBD to help? Does it help?
Oh my gosh, do I ever take CBD? And I only discovered it probably 2.5 months ago. So my level of, I guess we'll call it like daily, baseline dysfunctionality was very high on a scale of, probably 80 to 90% that I would feel like crap every single day. And I had a lot of symptoms. It would feel like I couldn't breathe. That's one. My diaphragm is affected by where my lesion is, which affects the nerves around it. So it can feel like I can't breathe, even though I can. And I have what I refer to as eyeball murder parties, party of one only. And on it goes. I have, it feels like I'm walking on a ship most days because my brain doesn't understand that my feet can't feel the floor, and my feet from a sensory perspective just can't feel the floor sometimes. So, or as much as they need to enable that stability. So, after taking the CBD oil, my stamina is much improved, and I actually started selling it now. And I seriously make like $12 a bottle, so I don't so I don't sell it to, like I'm cleaning up. I sell it because it worked for me. I'm a living testimony. I don't care what brand people use. If they have an autoimmune disorder, inflammation, anxiety, it cured my husband's anxiety after he's been suffering. He's an Army veteran, and he's been suffering with insomnia, and dude can sleep. So, I don't care where you get it. If you have an inflammatory disorder, if you know somebody going through chemo, they probably want to vape it. However, but the THC isn't even the active ingredient. That's not what does the job. So yes to that. And I'm so glad to have found it because I was put on multiple medications one side effect didn't seem to be taken very seriously, even though I said my heart hurts. My heart actually hurts. Oh, well, that's just rare. And, maybe you should just push through. Are you kidding me? No, I only have one of those. So,
well, it makes sense why the Rastas say that herb grows on King Solomon's grave. I have a very close friend of mine who I can only describe as a mad scientist. And when you walk into his lab here in Utah, he has this collection of you truly realize that you're with a mad scientist. And I won't go into the long and short of it, but I'm talking about things like, he now owns some of Tesla's patents. He's tapped into this frequency. Now, listen, for my audience, I'm not saying that this is how it is. I'm just saying how he explained it to me. But he taps into a frequency we don't understand. I've watched him power electrical devices with nothing but an antenna that is pulling electrons from the ether. He started a truck with 2 AA batteries attached to this thing. Well, one of the things that he does is CBD and the whole spectrum of cannabinoids. Like CBG, he says, will grow your hair back if you're a man suffering from male pattern baldness, all this stuff. And the way he describes the effect of CBD, which, just FYI, CBD by itself is excellent, and I'm a proponent of CBD. And I am not a proponent of anything illegal, though I am all for smaller government. When everyone was talking about, hey, are you for or against gay marriage? This is what I'm against. The government shouldn't have any say in any of this. That's what I'm against. And so everyone's arguing about the morality of it, and I'm saying the government shouldn't even be involved. Like, how can they say, yes, you can and you can't? That's like beyond it. And so that aside, that's funny because this is the first time I'm bringing up politics on here. I swear, Hillary. But my whole point in saying all this is that he says, first off, that the effects of CBD are increased when married with small doses of THC, whether or not that's accurate, whatever. This is how he explains it works now. He was lobbying here in Utah to get it all approved for medical use. And they said, look, if anyone has any of the cannabinoid spectrum in their bodies, they're going to go straight to jail. This is what one of the senators said. And he said, well, then you need to throw every breastfeeding mother in jail because cannabinoids are never naturally produced, because you have 2 cannabinoid receptors in your brain, as do I. And they are never produced in the sheer quantity as they are when a mother is breastfeeding and she's transferring all kinds of cannabinoids that are unique to the human body as well. They don't even grow just in the plant during breastfeeding. And he claims this is why a child will wake up, voraciously eat, and then fall back asleep. But he says this is what happens. With autoimmune disorders, there is a communication issue. I think this will be of interest to you. I usually don't go on these long rants, but my mom had MS, many people close to it. So anyway, I'm just, for your benefit, if it's beneficial, he said that there's a communication issue when CBD, when your cannabinoid network is like a secondary communication channel. And so when you infuse your body with cannabinoids, it creates, potentially for the first time ever, the ability for your feet to say, hey, brain, I can't even feel the floor, because prior, those electrical signals were lost in transmission. So your brain didn't know, and your feet didn't know that your brain weren't receiving these. And so you're shorting, like what you said. Yeah. And when you have the full spectrum cannabinoid network, your feet are finally able to send a secondary signal that says, hey, yeah, I can't feel anything. So then your brain actually starts to realize that and restore or repair the ability to do so. So anyway, that's just a long side note as to why he claims CBD helps people with autoimmune disorders.
That is amazing. And I had no idea. And in fact, there are so many things that they don't know about these autoimmune disorders that even one neurologist, when pitted against the other, would not have the same breadth of knowledge. So I had no idea about that. And in my 4th year, I only just learned that my inability to use my legs periodically, I call it occasional paralysis.
Yeah.
It's like hysterical blindness. No. But that is based on that fuse short circuiting over and over again. But I didn't know that until year 4. So people who are newly diagnosed and whatnot, and I'm not going to go into a tangent either, but it's just amazing how you have to be your own advocate. And I am fascinated about the CBD component and right there with you as far as let's keep government small. I don't judge you, whatever, that's fine. That's not my cup of tea. I can't take THC. You don't want me paranoid. You just don't. That's not fun for anybody.
Well, I don't take it, Hillary. So you don't need to judge me either way. I am just the messenger. And I have found this is something. So tell me this. This was controversial when I posted this. The messenger is just as important as the message. See, I run around and I tell people, this is like an abrupt transition, that a inferior product with superior marketing will always destroy a superior product with inferior marketing. And so my message to everybody is they're always like, oh, I'm just the messenger, blah, blah, blah. But no, the messenger, because of that, the next logical rung of the ladder is that the messenger is just as important, sometimes more important than the message. Do you remember when your parents would freak out and you could not hear what they were saying because of the poor way in which they told you? And we run around in marketing and advertising in our day-to-day lives with people that we love or don't love, trying to spout that our message is pure so they should overlook the manner in which it is given. I mean, how have you noticed this? What are your thoughts?
So it's very interesting because since getting ill, I've been on every kind of journey of repairing trust, of understanding that my perception is faulty, of what we call in my house being gentle with each other. So if you have a bad day and, you just kind of start snapping at each other a little bit, we forgive each other and say, you know what, we're just going to call this a do-over and it's fine. But it is important how you communicate your message, and the way that you're feeling is not an excuse for your behavior. And that is something that I 1,000,000% agree on, because you have to be held accountable to continually improve your communication. It doesn't matter if you had a bad day. It doesn't matter if you fell in a mud puddle. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't excuse your venting onto someone else and potentially interrupting their energy and interrupting the blessings in their day and their abundance. Like, you don't have the right to do that. So we continually work on that. We had to learn how to fight. We used to interrupt each other all the time, my husband and I. And one day, and I was such a peacekeeper, so I would never have an issue. We're going on 6 years at the time, never had an issue. Finally, one day I said, I have all kinds of issues. I've been lying to you. I have every issue under the sun. We have to fix this. And he was like, oh my God, this is horrendous news. What do we do? And so we had to start almost at the beginning and relearn how to fight. So it really goes back to, we have to care. Whether we're talking about a product, whether we're talking about communicating with somebody in our relationship, and this is tremendously true, because as I worked on my personal relationships, well, that's great in one area, establishing trust and really going deep into vulnerability and feeling safe and all these things. And then in business, you have to do the same thing. You can't have these shallow interactions with people who are so deeply involved in your brand. So you have to work on that communication, even if you don't want to. And I hate conflict. I'm the best ghost you will ever see. Like, you won't even know I'm gone. But that you can't run a business that way. So you have to work on those things in your business too. And then, and I mentioned this when I sent in the questionnaire, that Elon Ferdman and Guy Ferdman run the Satori Prime podcast. And man, did they blow my mind with their, it's almost like a theology in a way of perception and how we all assume the truth based on our assessment of how a message is delivered, etc. But really, instead of perceiving what we're seeing and what we're hearing to be the truth, we should question it. So yes, that was a very long-winded response.
So when you say question the truth, I just finished an interview with Rabbi Friedman, and he has had an institute for women for the last 46 years, and it's based in Hasidic philosophy. And he talks about love and marriage, and that love destroys marriage, like the concept of being in love with love and all this. I won't go into the whole thing. One of the questions I asked him is, I said, do you have moments where you've questioned your faith? And he spoke about how our understanding of truth doesn't change whether or not something is true. And it's so funny because right before that, I was on Neil deGrasse Tyson's Instagram feed, and he had posted something similar, but on the other side of the fence. He said, science doesn't care about your belief. And so when you say this radical questioning of truth, my paraphrasing of your words, what does that mean?
I like that. So let's say that as I was working on my relationship with he was my fiance at the time. When I got sick, I did everything I possibly could to push him away because I really thought that I was condemning him to an octogenarian lifestyle. Let's get your pudding at 4 p.m. and we're, going to bed, hitting the hay at 5. Like you're and you're a young man. I don't want to condemn you to that. But it feeds into ascribing intent as well. So the first thing, going back to the message, if as we're going through this and we're learning each other and we're reaching different levels of vulnerability, you're going to feel threatened. You're going to feel threatened and defenses are going to come up and you're going to respond in more spontaneous ways where they're going to be more reactive than deliberate and thoughtful. So I had to recognize, okay, this is the scope of the situation. It's pretty serious. There's a lot of base fears, instinctual, primitive fears that are rising to the surface about loss, about rejection, about abandonment, and all these things. So our communication is cushioned in that right now. So I have to look at him and say, this man loves me. I don't think he wants to hurt me. I think that I am ascribing his intent and I'm telling him what his truth is. Because if I say to him, what you said before made me feel like you didn't believe me that I didn't feel well today, for example. And I know that's not the case, right? Because you believe me. You're the person I'm closest to in the whole wide world. Oh my gosh, no, I didn't mean that. No, I'm sorry. I'm just having a this, that, the other. I was confused because of XYZ, that type of a thing where I think, especially when we find ourselves offended, and that always comes back to ego, right? How dare he, how dare she, right? Don't they know that I, da, 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 da. Okay, well, before you go there and before you get reactive and before you whip out all your defenses, just pause for a moment and then ask that person, did you really mean this? Because I thought you meant this.
That's interesting. So you had a piece written about a decade-long struggle with an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of information on the internet about that. So if people are curious about that, they can go there. My question to you is, what need were you satiating with your disorder?
Oh, you're so good. You're so good. And I had this eating disorder for 3 decades.
3 decades. Okay.
At my lowest weight, I was down to 93 pounds. And I had just broken up. Ironically, with my husband. We took a break when he came back from the army base, and prior to that, war. So we had been through some stuff. But anyways, I got down to 93 pounds. I had 3 young children at the time, and went to an eating disorder clinic because it was like, physically I couldn't function. I couldn't walk very well. I was short of breath, etc. Was going to faint. Something's wrong. So I went to this eating disorder clinic, and they said, well, the only way we will not take you inpatient is if you see 3 of our specialists. So a general practitioner, doctor, a psychiatrist, and a nutritionist 3 times a week, each of them 3 times a week. So I said, okay, because they said, if you don't agree to that, we need to take you inpatient. And Trevor, I would have been rooming with teenagers. As somebody in their late 30s, I would have been rooming with teenagers because I could not get my poop in a group by that time. I was tired of myself. I was tired of being afraid. So you can read about that on the Daily Mail. And I wrote about, I'm really glad to have a muffin top now. So it's so true. Like, I don't even care. I'm good. I'm fine. That arose out of a pretty strenuous childhood. I didn't feel safe in many regards. I didn't feel safe when I was eating. I thought I would choke based on an incident that happened with my father when I was 4 years old. I didn't know if the food we had available was not spoiled. We had gone to the food shelf. We had lost electricity and had to put food in the snow. And so it was really based in a lot of very entangled and traumatic emotions. And when you grow up in that capacity, you really don't have a lot of security to hold on to. You don't have modeling. You don't know how to be a mother. You don't know how to have a relationship. So I just pretty much was excellent at making mistakes, although I wanted something more. I didn't want to be afraid to eat meat. I didn't want to be afraid to eat at night. I didn't want to be afraid to feel overly full. And I say these things, and as they come out, I'm like, man, these are ridiculous, because that is what eating disorders are. They are all about creating rules that in your head sound sane, but they're components of control. So it all has to do with control. If I can control not being sick, then I'll feel safe, then I'll be okay. But it's when you get out of control that if you're doing it in an unhealthy manner, then you're going to implement something that's a terrible, quote unquote, solution.
That's interesting. So years later, let me back up. Somewhere, my dad once read and said to me, and for whatever reason it stuck with me since then, that a man doesn't show his true face until 40. So according to that, I'm still not who I actually am, if that man was the almighty speaker of truth. But I question the things that I value, why I value them. And one of the things that for a long time I just kept to myself, because I was raised, like I think most people, to believe that certain desires are desires based in conceit, and to be conceited is to be bad. And one of my external desires is the desire to be significant. It's significance. I'm significance driven on a large level, not fully. There are many things that I would still do, and there's many things I do behind the scenes that no one has any clue about. But when I do them, I think to myself, I derive pleasure out of being significant perceptually to other people. And it's something that on some level I'm still ashamed of. Like my environment and my belief system is telling me that that's not right. And I agree, I shouldn't care. But what I've decided to do is, as I eradicate from that for myself, I'm also going to use the carrot to have it drive me to achieve more. What, in retrospect, are you most ashamed of regarding reasons for your desires? Reasons for things that you did? With mine being the fact that I pursue significance.
Mm-hmm. I pursued drama, even though I lied to myself about it, because drama and attention to me was love. So, and I had to figure that out this past year. I spoke with a coach named Michael Griswold, and life is so interesting because we get together for reasons that we believe are the reason. So we're going to work together. I'm going to help you with your bio, whatever. For whatever reason, we did not finish that project, but we did have amazing conversations and very insightful conversations where he would ask you a question. And because I'm ready, and because you're ready to say, I can handle the truth about myself, even if I'm not proud of it, I can handle the truth about it because I've done the work to love me and to say, okay, that's my truth. It's not my entire truth. And I'm not going to beat myself up for being human and for having that need and for seeking it in a dysfunctional manner. But Michael just brought this out of me. And I realized that I had liked attention, even in a negative capacity, and being painted as the black sheep of the family. And, oh, what is she up to now? And, and I'd always joke about it, like, I'm just roasting a goat in my living room for my sacrifice, So, and then I realized that felt like nobody could forget me. I was making myself unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. And I was doing that because I believed and I had been shown that I was disposable. So as soon as I recognized that, I said, do I want to live this way? Is this really what my aim is? Is this where my joy is? Then I was able to let go of perpetuating drama. I was able to let go of not being able to forgive, because if I couldn't forgive, I still had a connection to people who engaged in drama and therefore let me know I was unforgettable.
That's interesting. So I have 3 daughters, 7, 5, and like 5 or 6 months or something. And I see, this is totally observational and I could have it completely wrong. But I believe at least that the neurochemistry of females, you have different hormones than me, react differently to various stimuli. And what I try so hard to do is not do anything that will cause them to feel the need to be something different than they are in order to get the attention that I think is that all humans seek after, but I think girls also seek after. And so, when my oldest comes home and does well, we're like, oh, you worked so hard and that's why you did well. And, we try all these weird things like that. But what can I do as a dad who's still young? I'm 33. Oh my gosh, I'm 34. Oh, never mind. I'm 34. I hate that. Whatever. Okay. As a dad that's still young, what can I do to really give them the best go at not having any like childhood things that are caused by their parents?
That's amazing. So I went through a time with primarily my 2 oldest children, where my oldest child, my son, who is now 24, will say, you are a different mother than the mother that I grew up with. And he's absolutely right about that. And then my younger 2 are used to this kind of more hippie-ish mother, and I let the F words fly because it's just a word and I don't care. And as long as you're a good person, when you're an adult and you're my child, you get to swear right along with me. But prior to that, we're going to kind of, I still have to do my best to instill that in you. But I think the number one thing, and especially as a father of daughters, is to understand you are important in so many different ways. How you respond to them and your intention in dealing with them is extremely important, because it colors the way they are going to have relationships when they're older. Are they going to look at a man and say, I'm just waiting for him to drop trow and offend me? Or are they going to say, you know what? I'm surrounded by good men, and my dad was one of them. And so I know that he's human. So don't try and be a demigod, but be human. And let them know it's okay to be human. You don't have to know everything all at the same time. I highly encourage you to be open, and open to the point almost of discomfort. I would rather have my kids come to me and ask me some weird, crazy question than have them go somewhere else because they felt like they couldn't talk to me and that I couldn't handle my discomfort. So it's all about, as long as you are just absolutely drowning them in love, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. In this world of men behaving badly and men really getting outed for that lately, be the guy who's not that guy. Be the guy who stops the uncomfortable joke telling that's, cloaked in a need to control. Be part of that change and share that with your daughters. I think that's incredibly empowering.
I love that. So I attempt to do that. So my philosophy, because I can get stuck up on so many, is simply this. For many years, I will be the man in their lives. And I only want to pass that baton over to someone that's better than me. And so I am going to give that guy a run for his money. That's kind of my philosophy.
I like it, though. I really like it, because you are recognizing that importance. And I think that a lot of fathers don't. And this is a societal culturing. We repeatedly feed into society that fathers are not as important as mothers, or fathers are the goofy guy and they can't handle a child who's sick and needs to go to the emergency room. And that absolutely then destroys that connection with your own recognition of how important you are. When you don't see how important you are in your child's life, then you're not going to respond that way, because you will not feel important. So the number one thing, as fathers who are listening, you are important. And I don't care if at some point we can go to a vending machine and a baby comes out. That does not diminish your role. We need men. We need differences, and I'm not talking about orientation and whatever, blah, 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 because I have 2 gay kids and I don't care. So I'm talking about recognize that you do have a role and you are important, and that will be translated to your child. I'm an editor at the Good Men Project, and I have been for 3 years, and it's very interesting to get caught up in the conversation of why men feel like they're disappearing.
So what do you think about Jack Donovan and his writing about, becoming a barbarian, about, what was his first book? Oh, man. I can't remember his first book. But basically, it's about embracing masculinity because it is under attack. Frankly, it is. And while I believe everything should be tempered, everything should be bridled, anything in excess is bad. And, the yin and yang of masculinity and femininity go so well together. It is a complete magnet that when you break off something that is masculine, I feel that there's a repercussion that we So let me back up a little bit. When I ask myself a question, I don't know how I started doing this or anything, but I do this. And it's very clarifying for me. When I ask myself a question about some sort of societal thing or socioeconomic this or that, or even gender roles, I say, okay, let's transport back, same situation 10,000 years ago. We're tribal. It makes it so easy to answer the question because the fact of the matter is I can run faster than my wife. I'm stronger than my wife. If a saber-toothed tiger attacks, I want her to go hide with the kids while I fight it. It's not because anything beyond, like nothing except that, one, I want her to live and be there for them. And two, I'm more prepared genetically. It has nothing to do with any belief system. I'm just built differently. And so I should be fighting the saber-toothed tiger. Now, that's a ridiculous example of hard questions that my kids come home from school with, or hard questions that I read online, and simplifying it so that I can understand its basic concept, and then extrapolate from that simple foundation into the complexity of today. So what masculinity, like, is it bad?
I don't think masculinity is bad. Jack Donovan has a little bit of a following as a feminist fascist. And
I've actually never heard that, but that's funny. That's good. That's true.
So, okay. So it is. And the thing is that I think broad sweeping proclamations in any degree can be damaging. And it's not that we need to, live a life of offense or anything like that. But in terms of masculinity, it is valuable. He likens it to masculinity as it occurs in a group of men. Mm-hmm. And I understand what you're saying because my husband was a firefighter. And so women would come and they would test for the job. And they would say, well, we have to let them in or whatever. And I'd say, well, how did they do? Well, they had a hard time. Some couldn't lift the dummy and some couldn't this and that, and my thought was, I don't want to be rescued by that woman that failed. I don't. I think there are definite physical criteria that need to be met in terms of jobs, and that it's the best man for the job. But we also have a dangerous legion of feminists who claim to be quote unquote feminists, who are bent on destroying men, and a real feminist who is all about progressing without hurting another population is not going to hate on men. This is not about destroying men and taking away their power because we're so angry and they've been in control and everything else. This is about identifying men and women separately and together have special gifts. And I don't think we can deny either one. In my house, my husband does all the outside stuff. I'm not interested. I'll sit on a plot of dirt and pick weeds out of the, whatever. But I'm not out there mowing the lawn, and I'm not doing this and that. And I tried to do things inside the house. It was much easier before I got sick. But my point is that it's okay to identify with those roles as long as you're not destructive. So at the same time, yes, yay, masculinity, absolutely, all the way. But don't be destructive. And in terms of, what he's saying that, people who are gay are hurting masculinity or whatever. No, I don't believe that. I think that it is absolutely possible, and it is in truth the ability to exist together with a population that you don't even understand. He is identifying, and this is where he fits in and whatever. It has nothing to do with anything. And it's like when we talk about politics, which we said we weren't going to, but people will say, they'll say, look at all the shoes outside on the White House lawn. And then somebody else will say, well, let's talk about the number of aborted babies that should be on the lawn. Can we not pay attention to one singular topic without marrying it to another. And so I think we need to look at things as coexisting.
So at the end of the night, we have this little ritual, and I really want to instill in my kids this idea: live and let live. Look, someone else does something, whatever. If it doesn't affect you and others, great. Celebrate whatever they're doing. And so the last words that we say at night are love all, serve all, create no sorrow. Because my big thing is you must create, that phrase, like you must create. And so for me, I found if I'm not creating, and you can call that whatever you want, progress in this, writing that, whatever the case is, this concept of creating, we're in a creation era right now. There were other eras, exploration, when we, settled down for the first time after being nomadic forever, the Renaissance and science. And right now it's like this creation era, and they call it the information age. But with everything that we're doing, we're creating, we're creating things that never existed. And I find it fascinating that of everything that we could have done, we haven't cured cancer, arguably, we haven't colonized Mars yet, all of this stuff. But what we have done and where our focus is what we want most, we always fulfill. And the internet is the culmination of millennia of desiring to connect by sharing ideas and information and communication, irregardless of geography and time. And having now created that, we're creating layers upon layers of things that help and things that hinder that process. So when you think in terms of you as a creator, everything you do, you're a creator, you're creating something. What are you creating? What does Hillary create?
It really extends past the tangible. So it's not just that I copyright or edit books or whatever. This is more of a tangible thing. You can hold a book in your hand. Maybe the copywriting, you could print it out on a piece of paper, but it's about experiences every day. And it's about enriching those experiences every day. And it's about being open to my role in these relationships with people. How can I best serve them? What can I do better? And I really, from cracking open into vulnerability, has just brought the proof for me that I live every day that we actually don't need to do as much as we think we need to do. When we have an urge to help somebody or bring them onto a project, or they pop into our heads or whatever the case is, and that they can do something that you can't do and vice versa, then I think we need to answer that. We need to deepen those experiences every single day with people. So I feel insanely fortunate to be able to work in this capacity. And it is, and you know this, it's such a privilege to be a part of someone's message and to help them get the words out that really embodies their authenticity, how they feel, how they sound, so they can reach people. I mean, we're just a big ripple.
I love that. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. So I'll just say it as it is. I really enjoy being ravaged by rapture and awe and contemplating what is almost incomprehensible. It's enjoyable. I feel unique. And so I don't know, serotonin and dopamine have to be squirting and all this stuff and the science behind it, whatever. But it's a fascinating thing to find awe. And regular, as Jason Silva says, shots of awe expand your mind. He talks about how it's like you need to upgrade your mental computer to be able to download the information that you get, you literally rewire your brain to comprehend this moment of awe. What brings you awe? Like the last time that you were just speechless. And I'll describe it like this. Shoot, I want to find this video again. Like 5 years ago, there was this video on the internet of this guy who was probably high on something, long hair, no shirt. And he was talking to the camera and they asked him something and he looked around and he said, "I love everybody." And then all of a sudden he was taken back. Like he didn't describe what he was feeling, but like his eyes got wide. He looked around and he almost fell backwards. And I think it's because in that moment he recognized how much he's like, wow, I truly love all these people. And he was taken away. Like he experienced awe tangibly, visibly. What brings you awe? And when was the last time that you felt it at like a magnitude of 9.6 on the Richter scale?
That's a loaded question. I spent the last year regularly feeling awe, and I'm not even kidding. It was the delightful acceptance of what could be created and a greater understanding of how we all work together. So, for example, I don't worry about jobs coming in, not at this point, but I mean, when I first got started, I actually didn't really worry about it. And I had a friend say to me, okay, I know it's scary because you have had the predictable taken away, and that's security. But look at how you're being taken care of in shorter increments. You have everything you need on this day. You have everything you need the next day. You have everything you need for the next 20 minutes. And if you just have faith in that, you'll see that every single day you don't need to forecast forward, because when you're truly working in your passion and you're truly working in your mission and where you are supposed to be, and you have answered that to your greatest ability, you will be in awe at how the universe takes care of you. I mean, I literally have, my husband calls them like they're kind of like my manifestation stones, and they're 2 citrine stones and a crystal to magnify the power. And I just kind of roll them around in my hand, and he goes, put those down. Put those down. Do you have the capacity to do all the work that's going to come in when you pick those up? And it's funny. It's funny because something will happen. We'll close the deal, whatever. And he said, did you touch those? Did you take those out and play with those? And, having the faith to free fall in your mission will bring you awe, because you won't have any idea what the true ending is, or maybe not even the ending, but the winding journey that you're on. You might say, okay, this is what my path is. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to do these things and implement so-and-so and whatever. And then when you look back, it is like a drunken ramble through a grocery store. It looks nothing like you would suspect it would look like, but yet you're taken care of. So we have to trust in that. And the other thing is that the way that we are living even affects our spouses. It even affects our older children and friends. And people get very caught up in that. And if you continually say, well, I'm not going to laugh at that because that's going to hurt somebody else's feelings, or I am going to choose to treat this person with kindness even though they make me insane, then other people will say, wow, that feels kind of good hearing about that. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try that. I'm going to see. And then you expand the ripple. So it's just an awesome experience being a person.
It is. So you keep talking about this ripple. What do you mean? Like, and how did you come up with, like, what introduced you to ripple philosophy?
So ripple philosophy is, to me, I mean, it's good. We named it. That's good. It has a name now. It means, I'd really pigeonholed myself for years. I'm a creative. Oh, I'm a creative person. It feels so good to be. I'm an artist. I can paint my toenails black, or I can rip them all off and apply them in this painting. I would like you just, you bend and flex to what your idea of creativity is. But you limit yourself to be other things. So yeah, I'm a creative. That's great. I'm also a hell of a businesswoman. I'm also a hell of a closer. And so I can be the ripple to other people who are not those things, or who maybe don't have the strength in those things. We're all in this big pond, man, and we are all rippling together. And we are supposed to my estimation, we are supposed to. When you start bogarting the abundance, guess what's going to happen? When you answer from a scarcity mindset, why are you bogarting it? Well, I'm afraid it's going to go away. I'm really thinking in terms of not how am I contributing to a greater good, but just me. I need to serve this need to feel better and whatever. And you're going to be given exactly that, because you will not be given abundance from a scarcity mindset. It literally can't happen. You can't wake up one day and say, well, I'm going to hoard this $5 and I'm not going to hand this over. And then I'm going to hoard this one over here. I'm going to hoard over here. And I'm just going to gather it together like Scrooge McDuck. And then from that, you will not have a watershed of opportunities, because you're putting that energy out there. It's like when people say, well, I keep attracting the same guy. What are you putting out there? Change it. Stop being a suckhole and be a ripple.
That's good.
So kind of tapering down now, concluding, I won't go into the long history of this because the audience knows my story, but there are two books that got me through rough segments. Everyone has rough segments, Mm-hmm. My rough segment, obviously for me, was rough. And so these two books I give to people that I value who have a celebratory experience in life. They got married, sold a business, whatever the case may be. The first one is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's simple, but it motivated me to keep going when everyone else left and I should have, quote unquote. The second one is A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. I studied philosophy in college, and this book it puts concepts simply. And so these are the two books that I give out because they mean something to me. If it was just an acquaintance, I might get them something else, Tools of Titans or something like that. But to those that are meaningful, these are like my bridge gift. What books or whatever type of content, audio, movie, whatever the case may be, is significant in your life? So much so that you wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to give this to anyone and everyone, kind of like throwing your pearls to the swine, but like, look, you're special to me and this is special to me. So here it is. What books or any sort of content fits that criteria for you?
I think it would be The Shack. So I had been on such a journey to forgive, and it was really holding me back. It was turning me into a bitter person. Again, I was misidentifying what I thought was love. And I wasn't coming to terms with what I needed to do to let go. And when I watched The Shack, and when I read the book first, and then I watched the movie about 16 times. And I watched the movie at night, and my husband was sleeping beside me, and I cried through as silently as I possibly could, half a box of Kleenex. And I just wept and I wept and I wept. And I learned in that movie and in that book that forgiving people doesn't mean that you're condoning what they did. It doesn't mean that you're letting them off the hook as far as like culpability and should they have done this or not? Was it the right or wrong thing to do? It doesn't mean that. And so if you're hung up on that and the inability to forgive, that's what you should know. It has nothing to do with, well, I guess I'll give it a pass. It doesn't mean that. It means that you are releasing yourself from what they did. You're no longer tied to that. You're giving yourself permission to feel peace. So I would definitely say The Shack. That book blew my mind on a number of levels. And I tweeted at the author and I said, hands down, my favorite book, life-changing, blah, 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 blah. And I think they probably thought I was nuts, but I couldn't help it. Like, I couldn't hold the joy in this journey of forgiveness. And I made incremental movements. And then it recommended, you would say, I forgive you, insert name. And then, of course, you're going to go, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any different. But you might have to say it 1,000 times. Okay. I'm all about actionable, content. So that's fine.
That's awesome. That's so good. I'm going to grab that book and read it. Where can people find you online and how can they engage with you?
People can find me online. Probably the easiest way is through my marketing website, which is jhill, Hill, mark.com. And engaging with me, you can do so in a number of different ways, whether you need copywriting, copy editing, or book editing done, or or are a chronically ill and or disabled entrepreneur. We can connect on SickBiz because I'm doing everything that I can to build that nonprofit into a viable resource to help people improve their life.
So good. Hey, Hillary, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I know the audience does. What I especially respect is that you're just open and transparent, and you keep using the term vulnerable. And I try to have people on the podcast that are willing to be open and transparent and vulnerable. And having that whole conversation about masculinity and femininity, I found that it's hard for other females that I've spoke to take off the facade of this is who I am, and like dodging all the questions and I appreciate you doing that, being that. I think it's incredible. Like that's how other people are touched. That's how other people are changed. And so I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my absolute pleasure, Trevor. Honestly, awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you, audience. We will see you tomorrow on iTunes, The Trevor Chapman Show.